Rosemary, I think you need these more than I do. Our film opened with Yui welcoming the young patriots to their dinner, or rather, lunch and a show. Said lunch was apparently going to be a price fix, which I'll say right now, that's probably a ripoff. A la carte all the way. But yeah, they gave the standard post-COVID warnings. Yep, sorry, there's still no miracle lights arching in the theaters anymore, thank God. And with that, the film proper opened with... should we? This movie is canon. I mean, to be fair, we'll count this whole intro as just one, as some of it was necessary for you viewers, but other bits I feel we're better off just letting the film speak for itself. Anyway, the intro featured the Cure's fighting Secretary, likely placing this film sometime after episode 29, which did air on the weekend this came out. They even utilized their second finisher to end this fight, which thankfully seemed to be Mitsuru Aoyama's only fight contribution to this film. I mean, it's actually decently done. I've just become way too used to seeing his copy-paste faces. And honestly, if this is by default the worst fight in this film, then that should tell you about the quality we can expect from this. Well, for the most part, we'll get to that. Anyway, like the show proper, Secretary just kind of peaced out after her defeat, leaving not much of an impression on anyone. Okay, Foxy, you want to start off with 10 or 20 bags of rice tomorrow? What the hell, make it 30. We then cut over to a flashback of Yui inviting some random homeless-looking kid into her house. Precure, the franchise that encourages stranger danger. Not kid, of course, as this was actually a pretty cute scene where Yui managed to put a legit delicious smile on him just by giving him some leftovers that she formed into a not-so-kid-sized kids meal. Seriously, Yui, not everyone loves rice as much as you. Still, unhealthy eating habits and shy presentation aside, the kid was very much appreciative of Yui's kindness for reasons we'd see later in the film. Good luck with your magical breathing training. This was all a dream that Yui woke up from, not by choice, as I think a Disney parade was going through. Because get it, their only defining character traits are all about food. Well, okay, it's not exactly the case in this film at least, as we will soon see that Jin Tanaka does know his stuff. Apparently, this event was going to be held at a theme park that was being powered by a revolutionary new energy source discovered by someone who no one barred asking why his silhouette looked like a rejected Muppet. Anyway, they also tried to invite Rosemary along as a friend, even though he should also act as an adult chaperone. Lady, do you not see this thing right here? It's right there. Look at it, look. Then again, maybe they were just trying to prevent the cook fires from taking over this story too. Anyway, they arrived at the park where they were greeted by some robots who I believe were voiced by some comedian guest stars, and what did they add to the film? Lines that could be read by any Randall off the street. Okay, good to know. What they did have were some Gijinka beams.
Well, there it is.
I mean, they're cute enough designs and everything, with the hair of the two kind of cleverly calling back to the heads of their fairy forms, but yeah, this is a little disappointing that they didn't really earn these forms through any trials or adversity like a certain teddy bear, and these were just given to them by these toaster ovens because the park had no shirt, no shoes, no service policy. Whatever, I guess it matched up well with another overhyped gimmick in the form of the Dream Earrings, the things that were handed out at the cinemas, though it looked a little different from what the IRL thing was. Inside the park, they met the owner and mascot named Kate Sith, who promised he'd grant every child's wish and desire, and yeah, when is this guy going to reveal that he's the bad guy? I mean, he's named after a soul-stealing trickster in Celtic mythology, and has invited a bunch of kids, and only kids, to his little pleasure island. Granted, not everyone is just going to pick up on this twist, but it does kind of feel like they dragged it on just a little too long. Anyway, after a scene where we just kind of pointlessly were reminded that Komi Komi wanted to be treated more like a grown-up, we got a montage of the Cures going around the park. It was mostly just fluff, with the only really entertaining part being when Amane got sick on the roller coaster, and then insisted that they move on to the dessert section of the park. Remember everyone, if you're feeling nauseous, just go have some ice cream, that's what the Precure said. Of course, the final stop was going to be at the food court, where depending on where the visitor had gone, the robots would make the titular kids' meals especially for them. This, of course, reminded Yui of a certain non-childhood friend boy. And speaking of whom, Takumi was also there, and Yui did something very out of character for her and invited him to hang out with them. I mean, yeah, she could have done that before they went to the park, but he was hanging out with his friends, so at least she didn't completely ignore him like in the show, so that's a definite plus. Even better, he actually turned her down, which is gonna be a lot better for your wallet in the future, kid. Besides, he didn't want the kids' meal, which of course caught the ear of a certain try-hard fox, who turned down the lunch after flashing back to what we just saw 16 seconds ago. Yeah, for some reason, parts of this film feel needlessly padded out between us getting constant reminders of the main conflict involving Komi trying to be more of an adult, or just completely superfluous moments like this. It's just kind of weird, and does make me wonder if this time could have been better spent later in the film. Anyway, one scene I won't call superfluous was Yui helping a little girl find her older sister. It was brief, but it was an example of Yui being a proactive heroine, which we didn't get to see much of in the show proper, because the writers kept forgetting that the pink lead wasn't just a background character. But still, good stuff that did solidify the Fox's admiration for her partner. Yeah, but that's way too wholesome, especially considering who's writing this. Come on, where's the good stuff? Ah, now there's the Jin Tanaka we all know and love. Just that classic cynicism that's taking some satirical jabs at the big friend fandom without being overly mean-spirited. I mean, sure, the scene does make sense in the context of the film, hence why it's not at all out of place, but also, come on, it's a bunch of police-looking security bots giving a grown man who hangs out with little girls a beating that is just beautifully on the nose. Even more so when they threw the dude into the trash. I'm so glad this cosplay is getting its rightful representation. Anyway, our heroines tried to save their big friend, but ended up going down with him. And for whatever reason, they didn't recreate the trash compactor scene from Star Wars, and instead were just surrounded by more robots looking to get rid of Rosemary and the fairies who had all de-transformed. Again, y'all should actually try to earn your new forms next time. Okay, take care, dude. Say hi to Ginger Frost. Now, of course, the Gears tried to protect him, and for whatever reason, the robots recognized their ages as undefinable and thus tried to exterminate them too. I don't know, maybe they just have a thing against cosplayers. Anyway, the meat of this fight took place in a storage warehouse, which led to an okay-ish fight. I mean, I like that they used a little strategy by holding some of the guards in place, leading to a domino effect from a Mortal Kombat leg sweep. Bit short, but it got the job done. Though they didn't have time to celebrate, as a bigger cafeteria bot managed to capture the energy fairies and took care of Rosemary by... Wow, that was actually kind of terrifying. But hey kids, you wanna buy a Rosemary plushie? I mean, yeah, this isn't the first time we've seen characters be dollified in this franchise, but just that little bit of him de-aging and commenting on how he felt younger, as though his mental faculties were slowly fading away, yeah, that's legit kind of off-putting, and I love it. Thank you, Tanaka. Anyway, with only one cure who wasn't reliant on a fairy partner left, our heroines made a tactical retreat. Meanwhile, the fairies ended up being Kate Sith, who took a liking to them, especially Komi, after she recognized that he was a cat in spite of looking like one of Freddy Fazbear's main variants. To celebrate their new friendship, we got one of the most awkward music sequences ever. I mean, not that it wasn't well put together or anything, but honestly, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be enchanting or creepy as all hell. I mean, at this point, it was pretty damn obvious that Sith was the villain, but they really played up the whimsy. Honestly, I kind of love the sequence just for that ambiguousness. Though I am more leaning towards calling it creepy, especially with this thing that's gonna haunt my nightmares tonight. And unfortunately for our heroines, they ended up getting caught up in the beat and didn't notice the approach of the guards marching in sequence. Fortunately, they were saved by Takumi.
I'm sorry. What?
yeah, I really don't know what the point of that line was. Like, was this referencing her knowing it was Takumi under the mask, even though that episode didn't air until 3 months after this movie? Or was it the first time they've ever gotten this close? Because I can think of a few instances where they at least greeted each other. Anyway, back with the fairies, they all partook of the titular meals, including Komekome, to really hammer home this obvious thesis of the film about how you should try and hold on to your childhood innocence even into adulthood. It's a fine enough message, even if they do kind of repeat it ad nauseum, with the fairies eating enough meals that, again, I'm pretty sure that no longer qualifies as the kids' meal when it's more than what a competitive eater would consume for their breakfast, but whatever, the real highlight here was Kate Sith. I'll just come right out and say it right now, this giant furball is not only the best part of this film, but probably the best antagonist to ever come out of this series. Granted, not much competition, but still. For starters, Natsuki Hanai's performance here was all but perfect. He generally sounded like a playful and yet well-meaning Mickey Mouse knockoff, which he kind of was, but there was a creepy undertone to his performance that rose more to the surface as the film went on. Though, ironically, I found him to be as creepiest when he was at his most subtle level. But yeah, on that note, there was a lot of layers to this character.
トッシーさんはお子様ランチ食べないパム？
僕はいいよ。そんな資格。
Kind of obviously, he was the kid from the beginning of the film who had been influenced by Yui down to his fairy form being based off of a crude drawing she had done. However, in a great twist that I kind of wish we had seen in the series proper, he managed to take Yui's idealism about bringing smiles to everyone through food and warped it into something else. As while he wasn't trying to use his kids' meals to directly harm the kids, he was essentially using them as bait to get them away from their parents in order to achieve what he believed to be true delicious smiles. As when the parents inevitably arrived to pick up their kids, they got the doll treatment. Which, you know, if you send your kids to an amusement park unsupervised, then yeah, you honestly kind of deserve this. But yeah, for him, turning all of the adults into dolls was just removing the source of all despair in the world based on his own experiences. As revealed through Takumi turning Rosemary back to normal with his Delicious Stone, the power source that Kate Sith had been using had to have been something similar. Sure enough, it was a giant Delicious Stone that they never explained where it came from or why they could do just about anything with it, so yeah, pretty much in keeping with the show. And through a very Madoka Magica-esque flashback, seriously, I think someone was trying to rip off Shaft bad. We learned about Kate Sith's backstory, where he was essentially Dr. K from Power Rangers RPM, being seemingly kidnapped for his intelligence, and manipulated by some obviously evil scientists into helping control the giant stone. And we knew they were evil because they all look like Hanzawa-san, even though they're not actually that bad. But yeah, this was also one of the best parts of the film, even if they were kind of ripping off Shaft, but hey, at least they're ripping off something good, and it did effectively recount Kate Sith's backstory. And while what Yui did for him was a genuinely kind act, it was also likely the first instance of kindness he had experienced in a long time, which also had the adverse effect of making him aware of what cruelty was. Thus, after seeing his desires to spread the happiness he had gotten from Yui warped into something for world domination, because again, these guys have to be cartoonishly evil, he turned the stone against them, and developed one of the worst cases of a Peter Pan complex. Yeah, as we'd see by the end of the film, Kate Sith was at least in his late teens, or at least old enough to open up his own business. In other words, he was an adult who had tricked a bunch of kids into participating in his little experiment to create what he perceived to be a better world. He was hardly any different than the scientists who had tricked him in the first place, hence why he couldn't eat the meals that looked like what Yui had given him, because he knew deep down he didn't deserve it. So let's see, we have a multi-layered, well-intentioned extremist with significant ties to the main character of the show, to the point that he becomes a dark reflection of her ideals. What even are you still doing here? To really hammer that last point home, Yui said something that I almost feel like was a direct jab from Tanaka to the writing team of the series proper. Yeah, it's almost as if that phrase really can't apply to people of far less privileged positions than you. Seriously, this scene is nothing groundbreaking, but it's just so much better than what we got in the final arc of the show proper. But yeah, after all of those reveals, we had entered into the final battle, and in a nice touch, Kate Sith purposely ejected all of the kids from the conflict, showing that he's not a total hypocrite who would hurt actual children. Well, to be fair, he is having a bit of an off day. I mean, he was understandably frustrated by them actually utilizing the delicious field as more than just a cheap cost-saving measure, as it was preventing him from initiating the final phase of his plan, which involved turning the park into an underwhelming final boss. I mean, to be fair, the Wild Wild West Spider-Bot here did have a pretty epic moveset with weapons for days, but I just can't get over that design. I mean, at the very least, you can replace this goofy looking face with this thing. Fortunately, the actual final fight was really well done, with Nishiki Itoka doing their usual multiple angles trick, though this time with freaking Contra missile surfing. Great stuff that was kind of unfortunately hurt by this movie's pacing issues, as rather than just one epically elongated battle, they also had to kind of stop in the middle in order to let the energy fairies hijack Kate Sid's beam attack because... Yeah, unless you're Lord Genome, I'm calling that a bit of an ass pull. From there, we got transformation sequences for all 7 heroes on the field. And look, I'm not saying a magical girl anime shouldn't have transformation sequences, that'd just be insane, but it really hurts the flow of this scene as again, 7 sequences back to back. That's legit kind of sensory overload that doesn't really let the viewer appreciate these designs as they just go so quickly by. Personally, I would have done at least the fairies transformations before the onset of this battle, and then maybe in the middle of the fight, like during a second wind scene, they give their respective partners and Amane their movie exclusive forms. Also yeah, who's powering her up? As for the forms themselves, they were... Honestly, I just think there's a little too much white throughout as they're all essentially dressing up as maids and maybe one butler. Though on that note, I will say the ramen duel probably have my favorite designs, mostly thanks to them drawing its awesome wings, and more importantly, at least a little more color breakup than these other designs. Anyway, while better pacing would have helped the scene a lot, the remainder of the fight was at least nicely done, with the rice duel delivering an awesome double falcon punch that should have ended the battle, but of course they had to bring in that stupid candle finisher that just makes me wish we could have seen this thing flung into outer space. Well, at least things resolved pretty nicely with Kate Sid admitting to his wrongdoings, and the 3 leads of this film, yeah screw everyone else, sharing some musubi in a much more meaningful exchange than what they tried to do with Goldots at the end of the series proper. With that, the film ended with the Catboy dismantling his park, and I'm guessing selling off the copyright so that he could open up a little bistro. Meanwhile, our protagonist partook in kids' meals that, again, make me wonder if Japanese kids really need these many carbs. Even the fairies' meals look like a hearty meal to me. Speaking of which, the post-credits featured a short where they tried to feed the kid from the prologue a specially designed meal to at least make the price fix a little less of a ripoff. However, as the little brat just kept on making insane demands, the Delicious Party were forced to make this a bit of a mini all-stars by bringing in the leads of the previous 3 series. And ultimately, their contributions were mostly just garnishes and their respective shows as candies, which, considering how all of these have been discontinued, makes me worried about the expiration dates. Whatever, it was a cute, kind of funny short film that ended with the entire team showing up, though only the Tropical Rouge team was fully voiced because...
The voice actor budget!
Oh, shut up.
Though honestly, the only VA exchange that mattered to me as a Symphogear fan was this. And she only belongs to me. And hey, technically Dave and Brian will have next season's cures. But yeah, that was the Delicious Party movie, and yeah, it was better than the final arc of the series proper. I mean, it's still not quite in the great tier for me, but still a very solid solo film. Obviously, considering how much I went on about him, the antagonist of this film was my favorite element of it, thanks to a fantastically told backstory that actually tied in well with the main character of the show. Though, other than that, there weren't too many other standout elements, mostly because they didn't get much focus and were more used for cheap fan service. Still, what was there was good, and does prove that when you have a competent chef/writer in the room, then you tend to have a little bit better food as well as story. As I've gone over multiple times, I thought the biggest fundamental issue with Delicious Party by the end of its run was that much of its conflict and resolution became less about the title characters and more about the cook fighters. Thus, having Yui trying to resolve the heavy psychological issues of someone she hardly knew just felt unearned. Here, though, it was much more justified. I mean, even if it was just one encounter, at least she did see the genuine joy in Kate's eyes when he ate her lunch, and she even got to see his backstory play out thanks to the delicious stone projecting his emotions. Thus, she did have the proper motivations to want to rescue someone that she did put a genuine delicious smile on, whilst he was also kind of misusing her grandmother's teachings. That is just so much better of a conflict than what we got with Goldot, with Kate Sith in particular just being a better sympathetic monster. As a result, I didn't really mind that this was mostly just the Rice Duels film, while everyone else was just kind of there. Though it did kind of make some of the other elements of this film, like the energy fairies gaining their human forms, feel like a cheap gimmick with how briefly they were on screen altogether. Then honestly, if they were just going to use these forms in the final episode of the series proper, they may as well have just have saved them until then. Still, I do understand why they and their pseudo-Precure forms were in the film, even though the teddy bear still reigned supreme, especially just as a film. And even if they were undercooked elements, a common thing with the season, they didn't take that much away from the film that also had some of that great Jin Tanaka cynicism that I have missed, like everything having to do with Rosemary. As well as much more solid writing overall, like acknowledging that while Yui's idealism was great and everything, food alone can't just spread happiness, and sometimes you actually have to put in the work in order to connect with others. Combine that with some pretty impressive animation, and you get a pretty solid film overall. While it still maintains some of the issues of the series proper, like Yui's lack of a defined character, as well as its own distracting pacing issues, I overall still enjoyed this film. Not one of my favorites, but at least the portion sizes were generous. With that though, I think we have a bit more of a solid basis for the requisite overview of the series that we're currently working on. Right now, I will say it's going to be very critical, but maybe less so on the series itself, and more so on the franchise and Toei's management of it throughout the Reiwa era so far. Look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and ooh, my bet on the Mario Kart McDee's toys winning. Yes, a grown man can buy cheap fast food toys. You got a problem with that?